After discussing in length about what exactly do you mean by economy, we also discussed about who all are the basic economic entity. It is but natural we all would like to know, okay, what is the role of all such economic entity. We are aware about it that economy is all about production and distribution of goods and services for the purpose of satisfaction of human wants. But the entities which are playing the most important role in actually moving our economy are as under. The first one being households, followed by firms. Now we haven't come across the word firms. What do you mean by the word firm? So let me tell you, my dear friend, all producers collectively, we talk about an individual producer, but I'm not talking about an individual producer. All producers collectively together constitute a firm. So when I'm talking about a firm, I am talking about the total production of goods that has been produced and the total amount of the services that has been created in an economy. And who are the creator of all these things? Of course, yes, none other than all the producers. All the producers are collectively called as firms. So who all are the most important basic economic entities which play a very important role in running the economy? They should be first households. Households are represented by consumers. What about firms? So firms are represented by the producers. And the last one, but not the least, most important one would be government. Of course, yes, government plays a very, very important role. As it is, India is a mixed economy, but otherwise also in any economy all over the world, government plays a very important role with respect to churning, rolling, moving, or keep the economy ongoing. Now, we would be interested in knowing or studying much about the households. Now, households are represented by the consumers. You know what? Consumer play a very vital role. How it can be a vital? First thing, see what happened. A consumer himself is willing to act as a factor of production. A consumer would act as a factor of production means the consumer would be interested in providing his services. Of course, yes, a consumer will provide a service, a consumer will contribute to the production. That means a consumer will definitely be a very important role in the production process. Not only that, a consumer would also be on the demand side, because whatever money the consumer has earned, with that money he will also come out to demand for goods and services. So isn't it interesting that a consumer is, or a consumer sector, or a consumption function, or probably a household, which is a collective noun for a consumer, is not just merely a supplier of factor of production, but also stands to create a demand for goods and services. You know what? Producers are relieved only when consumer starts demanding for goods and services. So basically, consumer is acting as a dual role of not just supplying the factor of production, but also standing for demand for goods and services. So my dear friends, have a look. Household play a very vital and an important role. First is they are a factor owners. That means they are owner of factor of production. We already discussed in detail what all are the factors of production: land, labor, capital, and entrepreneur. In this household, we are studying about land, labor, and capital. So they are a factor owner, and they are the one who provide factor of production to the producer. They are a consumer. That is so interesting. Not just factor owner, but they are a consumer also. That means they will demand for all the goods and services which are produced by the producer or the firm. Now, one more interesting thing which we have not discussed so far is, as a factor of production, I receive reward. My reward could be in the form of rent, it could be in the form of wages, it could be in the form of interest. Whatever money I earn, part of that money I will spend. The balance money I may save also. So my savings will directly go to the bank. My savings will be invested elsewhere. that investment will lead to capital formation in an economy. You know what is capital formation? The small saving of all the people put together will go to bank. Bank will finance big projects for the purpose of maybe roadways, railways, transportation, communication, telecommunication, infrastructure, etc., shipbuilding and all. Now your money will definitely go to those people who will actually borrow the money from the bank for the purpose of creation of such gigantic assets. So imagine a household who was just not merely a factor owner but also a consumer. Not only that, if I earn money, I am also accountable to pay taxes. So I contribute to the government also by way of contributing my taxes. Not only that, it doesn't stop there. Whatever I have earned, part of it I have expended. The balance money I save, my savings will go to bank. Bank will give loan to someone else. That someone else will create a different asset for the country which will lead to economic growth and economic development. And everywhere, directly or indirectly, household will be responsible for such economic activity. That's why, my dear friend, this is a basic, most important, without which my economy cannot churn. That is why I say that household is a basic economic entity for the role that household is a factor owner, household is a consumer, is a taxpayer, and whatever income I earn, less the expense, the savings which can be mobilized into a capital formation. Household is also acting as a source of demand which is same as the consumer. Household acts as a consumer. A demand for goods and services which always keeps producer busy, motivated, always in action, which will definitely lead to economic production of goods and services for the purpose so that the wants of the people at large, of the consumers, can be satisfied. Diversification in production. Without the choice of the consumer, producer would have not thought about diversifying. Today, when you want to buy a refrigerator, it is the consumer who has to be kept in focus while designing a refrigerator. What type of refrigerator you would be asking for? Single door, double door, triple door? I mean, like deep frost, this one, that one. If you go to buy a car, there are varieties of car. That means the automobile industry has been diversified to such an extent that now car is not merely a car, but a status symbol, a luxury goods. For some it is a transport vehicle, for some it is a family car, for some it is a picnic car, for some it is a sedan, for some it is a holiday, etc. So basically diversification is possible only when consumer come out with multiple varieties and demand. Their demand would definitely be taken into consideration while producing the goods. So producer need to keep in mind, and that's how there will be a diversification in the production. So majorly, if you see, Amul Butter was merely into a production of butter, a dairy company. But today the brand has built and won the trust of people across the country such that it has not only diversified into butter, but cheese, you talk about ice creams, you talk about milk, you talk about bakery products, you talk about ghee, and the brand that it commands. They say that Amul, the taste of India. So you can understand that diversification. Talk about Mahindras and Mahindras. They were initially into tractors. Slowly and gradually, from the maker of tractors, they diversified into Tech Mahindra, which is a IT company, information technology company. Then their diversification into hospitality, Mahindra Holidays. Then their diversification into Mahindra and Mahindra Finance, that is again a financial company. Then their diversification into passenger vehicle. You have Mahindra and Mahindra Thar, you have Mahindra and Mahindra Scorpio. Then the diversification into a luxury car, then a diversification into steel plant, then a diversification into a real estate. So imagine that diversification depends upon the taste of the consumer. Once the brand automatically establish themselves depending upon the need of the customer, if I keep on notifying them, it gives me an opportunity to diversify so that I can meet the growing demands for goods and services of the people and their aspiration. That's how household play a very, very important role. Demand for services. Consumer just not demand goods, but they also demand good services. And trust me, good services are in very much demand. We always need good service with respect to plumbing. We need good electrician. We need good, of course, chartered accountant who can help us file our accounts, who can help us compute our tax liabilities. We always in search of a need of a very good tutor like Education Express. Of course, yes, Education Express. So basically, it's a consumer whose point would definitely be taken into consideration, and that's how we say that I every time refer to the word consumer. Consumer is an individual concept, whereas we are talking about a collective concept, that is household. All consumer put together would be called as a household. All producers put together would be called as a firm. So we know the important and the vital role that the household will play as a factor owner, as a consumer. Of course, yes, nevertheless, taxpayer, which will help government get its revenue so that the administration becomes easy. The income minus expense equation, which help us to understand the savings, which will get mobilized into capital formation. Not only that, they are also a source of demand, diversification of the product, and demand for services. So basically, when you get any question on household, you have ample of material to write for. And I'm sure it is not just that merely you will memorize it, but you can analyze and give a logical end to it. Once the household's roles are over, let's come and discuss the role of the producer. Now, individual producer may be called as a producer, whereas all producers put together collectively are called as a firm. So a firm basically constitute nothing but collection or a collectivity of all the producers put together. What are the important role? So producer also play a very important role because they are the one who actually hires factor of production. If I will not hire factor of production, then they may probably not get employment. They may not even get income also. So I am the one who is employing. I am the one who is providing. I am the one who is using all the factors of production. So I provide employment opportunities. I allow them to earn the income. Not only that, I also engage myself in production of goods and services. That is a wonderful job that I am doing by providing them an opportunity to satisfy their wants with the help of the goods and services that we have produced. So firms, collectively called as a producer, they are engaged in production, distribution and selling of goods. So production means conversion of raw material into finished goods. Also, they are the only buyer of factor of production. We already discussed about the same. Now, what is the importance of a firm? So we say that, sir, they supply goods and services. Already discussed about this point. Now, firm are very cost conscious. A producer will and has to be a cost conscious so that he can use all the resources wisely. So there is an optimum utilization of available resource. That means the producer just cannot afford to waste any single resource. He has to take into consideration how well a product mix can be created which will maximize not only the return but minimize the wastage. They usually work at zero wastage policies because for a simple reason that they are very cost conscious. They want to produce an article at the least cost so that they can compete among themselves, although they will enjoy the profit margin, but at the same time controlling the cost will give them an opportunity to earn an extra edge over their competitors by way of taking the market share and enjoying higher profits. So my dear friends, as we are talking about firms, they are the one who are engaged in selling, producing goods and services. They are the one who will employ or hire factor of productions. That means engagement in or production of goods and services, optimum utilization of the available resource as explained to you. They are the one who creates employment opportunities. That means it is the producer who provide employment. Already discussed about this point. It is a producer who will engage all the factors of production, giving them an employment opportunity as well as an opportunity of earning livelihood for them. Not only that, but they also help us earn lots of foreign exchange. Recently, I don't know if you are aware about the fact that USA had asked most of the Indian pharmaceutical companies for a drug which can help control coronavirus. Although the drug is not going to help directly, it is not a direct cure to the coronavirus, but it acts as a very important agent to give a resistance to the coronavirus HCQ. That means some hydrochloric combination of salt. And Indian pharmaceutical companies took a lead to provide a huge quantity of this salt not only to the USA but many other countries in the world at large. This was an out of box example, but there are many such examples where India has been taking lead with respect to its export orders. You talk about sugar, India is a leading exporter of a sugar. You talk about engineering goods, you talk about handicrafts, you talk about IT services. India has been engaged in providing IT services world over, not just because of the scale, but because of the smartness and the innovator. Of course, it is only the time that will decide, but as of now, on record, we can say and proudly say that there are many Indian companies which export lots of stuff and bringing in a foreign exchange for our nation, which help us stabilize the price of our currency. So producer play a very important role in earning foreign exchange for us. So if you want to find out what is an important of a producer, I would say that they are the one who provide employment. They are the one who help factor owners earn their income. They are the one who is engaged in production of goods and services. They are the one who utilize the resources more wisely, so there is an optimum allocation of resources without any wastage, and they are the one who will definitely bring in lots of foreign exchange for our country. So you can see supply of goods and services, efficient utilization, expansion of income and employment, export earning. One more thing that I would like to share with you. A producer can be categorized into a different category. We all have learned this long ago. A producer can be categorized under primary activities, that means a primary producer, a secondary producer and a tertiary producer. What do you mean by primary? Primary producer means the one who is engaged in converting the natural resources into finished goods. That means they are the one who will engage in exploiting the natural resources. For example, you can say mining. Mining is that example. Farming, mining, animal husbandry. So these are the examples. Fishing, lumbering. These are the examples. You can say that those are associated with the primary activities indulged in production of those goods which are directly by engaging themselves in exploitation of the natural resources. What about the secondary? Oh, of course, secondary is so simple. They are engaged in manufacturing activities. That means converting the raw materials into finished goods. So example would be cement industry. Example would be tire industry, sugar industry, baker, a tailor. They are all engaged in converting a raw material into finished goods. What about tertiary sector? As we know that primary sector and secondary sector are engaged in production of goods, whereas they all will need some services at their disposal. Services in the nature of banking, insurance, aviation, telecommunication, barber, lawyer, teacher, education institute, school, hospital. So basically they are all service industry. Today in India, tertiary sector or the service industry is gaining by leaps and bounds. They are playing a vital role in providing employment to large number of people in the country. So if you talk about firms, they can be engaged in primary activities, secondary activities and tertiary activities. Primary, conversion of natural resources or exploiting the natural resources to convert into finished goods. Whereas secondary activities are the one conversion of raw material into finished goods. By setting up a factory, a process would be there, plant machinery would be there, goods would be converted, raw material would be converted into finished goods. And the last one, tertiary. This is service oriented services of the teacher, lawyer, doctor, professionals, etc. After that, let us discuss the most important part of the whole chapter, that is government. I've been telling you that the government play a very important role in setting a tune of an economy. Government is not just merely a producer or a consumer, but it acts as a blend of both. So that means you can imagine that the government will have advantages or the features of both the consumer as well as the producer. That means all the advantages and the characteristics features that we have seen in household, all the advantages and characteristics that we have seen which were vital, significant, important in case of firms, they will surely be there in case of government because it is acting as a dual role. Not only that, government play a very important role as a regulator. Now, when you are a regulator, you need to monitor and review the activities going on between the producer and consumer time and time again. Because any activity which is disruptive in nature, any activity which can topple the economy, or any activity which is a threat to an economy must be reviewed, and a necessary action must be initiated by the government to establish a harmonious link between the two so that the economy can be sustained. The current environment is very challenging. The government will have to really come out with some out of box thinking to again make sure that the economy which is in the doldrums right now can pick up slowly and gradually so that the faith of the people in the economy can be restored. World over, if you see, world over there is a problem of unemployment. World over people are facing shortage of funds. In this scenario, when the confidence is so low, in this scenario, when the private entrepreneurs are not willing to invest more, in this scenario, when there is an uncertainty, the element of uncertainty, the element of fear, the element of greed, etc. is so much so that people are really not able to think on what exactly should be done. It is a government who will set the tone with their policies. It is a government who will become a producer as well as a consumer. As you know that government is a producer because it is engaging itself in production of various things. Construction of roads, railways, transport, communication, aviation, railways, law, justice, maintenance of law and order in the country. Everything is in the hand of the government. So the government needs lots of resources for the performance of its administrative duties. So it acts as a consumer as well as a producer. Consumer to satisfy the needs and the want of so many people. Producer by producing, as I told you, it's engaged in ONGC, that means energy company. It is engaged in NTPC. So by way of LIC, UTI, SBI, they're all government sector companies which definitely render services as well as engaged in one way or the other as a producer. Besides that, the government also has to act as a regulator to negotiate the price or to negotiate a trade. Government really plays a very transparent, a very important and a very role of a catalyst which will help economy to set its tone. Let's go through and review all the points that the government offers. Government is a producer as well as a consumer plus at the same time a regulator. Government exercises its control on the producer and consumer. If there is any producer who is trying to exploit a consumer, then in that case the government can intervene and can actually take the case of the producer by giving warning or imposing a penalty. Now the role of the government, supplier of the goods and services. Government also as a consumer incurs lots of consumption expenditure to satisfy the want of the people by giving them subsidies, by providing them various services, utility services, street lighting, etc. Investment expenditure, the government incurs lots of investment expenditure in construction of roads, railway tracks, railway line, network, infrastructure of the country and so on. So it needs to incur lots of expenditure. As a result, the government will employ lots of factors of production. Many laborers will get their job, daily wages, also employment opportunity scheme, employment guarantee scheme, minimum wage rate act. This is all what the government does. It regulates the price and demand supply situation. Recently, we all have faced an acute shortage of so many essentials. But the government has been trying hard to ensure that all necessary essentials reach to a consumer even though we are going through this pandemic and the prices have really not gone up. They are more or less has been sustained, and government is keeping a check on any of the hoarders or a producer who is trying to exploit the customers in this hour of time. So the government will have to dispense its duty with respect to understanding what exactly is the demand supply situation. so that the prices can be stabilized and can be controlled. So it does that by acting as a regulator. Government is just not merely a producer, not a consumer, but it performs both the role. In addition to that, it also acts as a regulator. All the primary health services, education services. Recently, as you know, that the corona testing is so expensive. It's 4,500 rupees for testing COVID-19. You go to Kasturba Hospital, it is all free of charge. Quarantine, free of charge. I'm not asking you should fall ill to experience that, but I'm making you understand that it's not coming free of cost. Employing so many people, facilitating so many people at large to ensure that their safety of their health is assured to them. Engaging the police force, risking the life of the people, risking the life of all the people who are engaged in the administrative activity, public administration. It's not an easy job, and all the expenditure on this front is actually borne by none other than the government. Lots and lots of expenditure on the healthcare is been spent and invested by the government. Lastly, the government constantly keeps on framing the economic policies. Now, in modern days, economy is not a closed economy. So you cannot have only domestic policies. You have to take into consideration what's happening around the world. Because we certainly, or our domestic producers are certainly going to face neck-to-neck competition in the world market. So in the world arena, in case if our government policies are not conducive enough, then our domestic producers will find it very difficult to compete in an international arena. The government will need to check on the policies that is existing in the international market and to reconcile that, to make sure that our policies smoothly along with the foreign policies can help a producer to grow in the home domestic market as well as in the international market. So the government is merely a maiba of the entire economy, which sets the tone which way we would be heading. Now there is another concept, that is foreign sector. Though foreign sector is very interesting, very important, but you see the dynamics of Indian economy. We are a country with such huge population, a population of more than 1.4 billion. Our domestic economy is so strong. The demand situation is extremely strong. Our exports are so low. The borrowings of the people generally at large is so low. The average age of the people in the country is comparatively less as compared to the developed country. These are the dynamics which will definitely set a new horizon for the Indian economy to grow and take a center stage going ahead in the world. Guys, be ready. We are really going to profile very, very high in a very short span of time. The journey will be interesting and definitely it will be challenging. In case if you know your economics well, you know your concepts well, and if you are looking forward to explore yourself in this subject, what you know is not the question and answers, but to have an enriching interest, to have a deep understanding of the subject, which is nothing but completely surrounding the human wants. The last concept, foreign sector, states that it is a sector where there is a participation of a foreign country. That means the ownership of the sector rests with the foreign country. That means they are also called as the sector which will be dominated by the foreigners. In other words, foreign sector is also called as the rest of the world. That means what is the main composition of this foreign sector? So the main composition of the foreign sector would be export and import, dealing in foreign exchange. So entire export and the import is governed by the foreign sector. Dealing in foreign currency would surely be governed by the foreign sector, and the ownership of the foreign sector lies by a country which is residing outside India. With this, my dear friends, we have discussed about household, we have discussed about firms, we have discussed about primary, secondary, tertiary, importance of firms, government, etc. Now, the last question, which I've already discussed, but again I'll make you understand, which is a very, very, very important question, that one must know the circular flow of income. You know what? Understand how an economy functions. It's a very simple example. Assume myself to be a producer and you yourself to be a factor owner. Factor owner means, suppose let us say you are a labor and I am a factor owner. I am interested in manufacturing leather goods. So what I need to do? I need to have a setup of all my factors of production, because they will contribute to the production. So I need to employ all the factor of production. So all the factor of production will render their service to me. When you render your service to me, what do I do? Sir, when a household will render their service to a firm, so definitely firm will receive the service, and in lieu of that, the firm will reward them by making a payment to them. The payment would be made to them in the form of, so depending upon the factor. If it is land, the payment would be rent. If it is labor, the payment would be wages. And sir, if it is capital, the payment would be interest. So a firm will employ all the factors, engage them in the production of goods and services, and in return, a firm will pay them reward. What will happen with that money? Of course, the money that the household will receive, what they will do? So with the money what they have received, they will spend that money on the goods and services. Which goods and services? So it could be anything. But definitely each of us will go to, suppose if I am engaged in sugar, and let us say I am working with the sugar mill, the money what I get, I am going to distribute our sugar, milk, this, that, and blah, 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 so many things. But certainly one thing is sure, the moment I earn, I am going to spend. So when I spend the money, who is spending the money? Sir, of course the household is spending the money. So where that money will go? Sir, the money will go to the firms. Fantastic. In return, what the firm will do? Sir, firm will give those goods and services to the households. So one thing becomes very clear and very interesting over here, that household will give me factor services. Me means I am a firm. Household will supply factor services. A firm will give payment to the household. Now the household will have money. They will use that money for purchase of goods and services from the firm. So basically, if you understand this, this can be explained with the help of the following diagram. We have firm over here, we have household over here. See the outer loop. The household is providing the factor services. You can check it the arrow. Household is providing the factor services. Household is providing the factor services to the firm. Firm will use these factor services to produce what? Goods and services. And once the goods and services are produced, firm will make the payment for factor service. Whom the payment will be made? Sir, of course the household. So the outer loop says, I give you service, you give me money. I give you service, you give me money. I give you service in the nature of factor services. You give me money in the nature of payment for my factor services. Now, household has the money. Household has the money. This money, household is going to use. Yes, the household is spending the money. Check it. Household is spending the money. Payment is made for goods and services. When you make payment to the firm, firm will give you goods and services. Firm gives you goods and services. You consume your goods and services. After the consumption is done, now you don't have money. So what do? Again, you go and provide service to the firm. Firm will make you a payment. You have the money, so you pay to the firm. Firm will give you goods and services. Again, the money is over. Again, you provide service. Again, I produce goods and services. Again, I pay you money. Again, you have money. Then you spend your money. You give the money to me. I give you goods and services. This circular flow, this rotation is a mutual exchange between the producer and the consumer. And economy can sustain as long as this mutual cooperation between the two remains absolutely active. With this, my dear friends, our whole chapter comes to an end. Thank you so much for watching the video, and I wish you all the best. In case if you have any doubt related to this chapter, you can surely contact us. Until then, goodbye to all of you.